Hello and good day, everyone. My name is Ryan Evans. I'm a certified evolutionary astrologer with the Stephen Forrest School of Evolutionary Astrology. I am certified at master level, having trained with the man for 8+ years. I'm also trained by the great astrologer Pat Kaluza from Minneapolis, and the two I don't know, famous? I don't know, maybe people know of the great Nathan Elderkin, who I will plug in this moment as a dear astrologer friend and mentor of mine, as well as the great Jerome McGeorge. So I have studied with those astrologers, getting a very broad spectrum of observations regarding this astrology stuff. So I've studied this stuff for 24 years, about as long as I've been a parent. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, is understanding and raising your child astrologically. And I'll do what I can to leave some time at the end for questions, this being a very thick and rich subject. Be it known that under no circumstances am I going to be able to cover all of the minutia regarding this topic, but will give you some basic outlines of what is developing into here a book that I'll be writing on raising your children astrologically. So the outcome of this, my hope, is that all those in attendance and watching this gain a basic astrological knowledge of your child's soul level needs and tendencies based on their astrology chart. So there's a really big disclaimer here. And the disclaimer here is that what I'm going to be talking about is my personal experience raising children, the valleys and pitfalls and mountain peaks that have come along the way, the benefits and liabilities therein. And the disclaimer here is that this is all my experience and my opinion. It's going to be different for everyone. Everyone's got their own techniques and their own preferences in their astrological engagement. So again, just giving you the Ryan Evans brand of observing your child's growth astrologically. So here is the number one rule about raising your child astrologically. Ready? Don't. The reason I say that is because, and I say that semi-tongue-in-cheek, but I want to emphasize that if any single one of us has any tendency towards fear or panic when they see certain astrological aspects or the like, then, projecting that fear onto our child's moon Pluto conjunction or moon Saturn opposition, and we go, oh my God, my child's already messed up and they're only 3 days out of the womb. Well, we're going to project that onto our child, and the way this stuff works is when we project that onto our child, onto anyone, they're going to reflect it back to us. So please do not even bother looking at your child's chart if you are that type of person who will go immediately to fear. Because the last thing, again, you want to do is project that onto your children. So, rule number 2, if you do choose to look at your child's chart, then there are some very important lenses through which to look at this, at their charts, so as to not project all of our stuff onto them. So here's the number one thing that we as parents have to remember when raising children astrologically. Number one, you as a parent will wound your child. You will do something. You are imperfect. You have your own karma. You have your own wounds. You have your own genetic baggage handed down generationally. And to think that just because you have a knowledge of the astrology that you're going to be able to raise your children absolutely perfect without wounding them is unfortunately erroneous. So when we understand that part of life is about the unconscious handing down of karma, then we can approach our parenting with a little more self-compassion. So if we can understand that we're not perfect and that we will invariably do something, no matter how conscious we are, to wound our child, then we can give ourselves a little bit of a break and go on to rule number 2. And that is, life is messy. Under no circumstances will we as parents be able to control anything and everything that happens to them. We can be the best darn parent in the world, but our child may have certain karmas that happen outside of our sphere of influence, and we have to understand that. So we go into raising children knowing that we're imperfect, that invariably we're going to hand down some woundedness, and that life is messy. We can go on to the third most important rule, is that our children came here to make mistakes and to grow and to learn, which thusly blends into number 4, which means we are not in charge of their karma. No matter how much we as parents would love to raise perfect, absolutely healthy children without wounds or triggers, it's not going to happen. So part of the thinking can be, well, if I am going to wound my child, if life is messy, and if they came here to make mistakes and grow, how can I as a parent, do this with as much grace and ease as humanly possible? So, which takes us, of course, then to number 4, that says we are not in charge of their karma. I am certain that we can all turn this back onto our parents and look at our parents and say, oh, they had a woundedness which I inherited. They were imperfect, which I have to accept. They have to give me a break and let me learn my stuff because, let's face it, they're of a different generation and they simply don't have context for all the things that I'm learning. Well, we turn that around and we say to our children the exact same thing. So to try to manipulate and control our children astrologically will invariably backfire and will invariably cause some kind of wounding. So, as a parent of 3 beautiful, perfect children, I'm here to talk about some of the uh, techniques and means of observation that have helped me raise 3 perfect, excellent, well-adjusted, healthy children. I do say so myself. Of which I had very little part. But this is the part that I had. Number 1, we have to understand our children's primal triad, their sun and their moon and their ascendant. First and foremost, and honestly, in my humble opinion, pretty much the only thing that is really healthy to look at as a parent as we're raising children. Because again, the more we know astrologically, the easier it is to see how that moon in 7 years is going to progress into conjunction with their natal Pluto, etc. And we can again project fear onto that, and we could edit our natural flow of child raising, thus causing a wobble in the force, if you will, and kind of mess up the natural flow of what they're here to learn. So, understanding what our child's primal triad is does definitely help. So, uh, I asked my children if I could talk about them in this lecture, and they all agreed. They all preferred I not mention names and show their charts, but I will definitely be talking about their charts. So so the brief outline is we want to understand what our child's sun, moon, and ascendant is. And we want to understand their lunar phase. And if we are really adept at not projecting fear onto those we love, then we'll want to look at their nodal story. But let's start with the simplest, the easiest, the sun. Knowing our child's sun sign gives us incredible insight as to who this person actually is, why they're here, what helps them maintain their sanity, their identity, and what we can do as parents to encourage them to be authentically themselves. Case number 1, my eldest son is a Scorpio with multiple planets conjuncting that sun in the 3rd house. So right away, the moment my son was born, I knew he was a Scorpio. I knew that he was going to be, of course, scorpionic, intense, always seeking the truth, uh, a very deeply feeling individual. So, under no circumstances was I going to try to turn him into a Taurus. Under no circumstances was I going to try to turn him into a Pisces. But to accept the fact that Scorpio has a whole set of benefits and liabilities. and to encourage the benefits and accept and flow with the liabilities. To do what we can, my MO was to do what I could to not push any Scorpio triggers. So I raised my eldest son, being very honest with him, being very truthful, being very real from day one. Third house son. We all know that the third house is about speaking and listening. So encouraging and allowing him to be as intense as he needed to be, and to speak as intensely as he needed to speak, and to for me to listen very intently to all the things he was saying as a 2-year-old, as a 7-year-old, as a 16-year-old, and to not project my own personal uh, judgment onto the whys and wherefores of what he should do and etc. Other than that he needed to speak and feel, well, to feel whatever he needed to feel and to be able to speak about it. Concurrently, in my speaking to him, it was it is very important to be again clear and honest and and forthcoming and truthful with as much information as I felt necessary and possible based on his age. My daughter, who is now 19, she is a Cancer sun, seventh house. So, again, knowing that who she is a person of the heart, here to, she has a Sun Mercury conjunction, here to listen compassionately to other people, here to engage with other people, with friends, with with expanded relations. Very important. It, to try to edit who she hung out with, so to speak, was was not necessarily something that was really too much of my business. It was something that she had to feel her way through. My youngest is uh, now 18, uh, is an Aquarian. So I think you can all, Aquarian, sixth house, but conjoin the descendant. So you can imagine that trying to control or dictate any part of his existence often ended up poorly. So, with an Aquarian as a sun, it was always important to hold my hold my hand out and open, thus allowing him to dance freely on it. Because as soon as someone tries to control or hold on to or dictate the actions of an Aquarian, well, we can all imagine what happens. So, knowing that my Scorpio sun needed to live a passionate life, and knowing that my sensitive daughter uh, needed to engage in deep, heartfelt relations with other people, and knowing that my youngest son needed to be the the individual of the family. uh, allowed them to develop who they were in that context. Knowing that my youngest son, is an Aquarian, I knew that it was impossible to superimpose Virgo onto him. And so, as parents, we operate in the context of what we know about their son astrologically in the house placement and encourage what we could imagine to be the best possible expression of that of that placement. Case in point, use my daughter for example. uh, Sun, Mercury, Cancer, seventh house. She's studying, and I'll get to the moon in a second to describe this. uh, she is studying psychology, and she is uh, has a has an emphasis on art therapy. She has a Pisces moon, and her desire currently is child psychology, Sun Mercury, uh, again with an emphasis on art therapy. So the conversations I would have with her as she was growing up invariably was all about how to connect with others on that heart emotional level. And in all of our conversations and all of the vicissitudes that children have in their growing up, being able to encourage the best of all possible aspects of, in this case, Cancer, Sun, Mercury, seventh house, has led her to this point where, boy, it sure looks like she's doing a magnificent job of actualizing that. So, knowing our children's sun sign and house placement, not looking at aspects so much, um, other than conjunctions, uh, not 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 worrying too much about any transits to that planet, but just knowing the sun sign and house placement, I was able to hold that space for her, for them, without again projecting fear onto that. Now, sure, I could look at the shadow, case in point with my daughter, uh, Mercury, Sun, Cancer, seventh house. The shadow of that energy could be a tendency to hide or withdraw, or uh, or to have incredible defense mechanisms around other people. So whenever those shadows would come up, I, as astrologer, would know to encourage the more healing, sensitive, compassionate, loving aspects of Cancer, and also to say, this is where you do need to be protective of your heart. This is where you may be giving too much of your love and compassion away to other people. And here's where you do need to protect yourself to a certain amount. So, knowing deeply that archetype, again, gives them a safe place in which to grow. Next, the moon. And this is probably the most important aspect of child raising, because when we are children, we are significantly more moony than we are, say, trying to actualize our north node, or trying to align with our Jupiter-Saturn conjunction or the like. The moon, in fact, I could probably say that this is the most important aspect of raising children, knowing what they're feeling deeply, what their needs are, what their joys are, what their preferred soul choices are, their desires, their lessons, their attitudes, and temperament. The moon in in uh, bullet point astrology says the heart of. So my eldest son has a Virgo moon. My daughter has a Pisces moon. And my youngest son has a Scorpio moon. So here's a wonderful, um, bless his heart for allowing me to share it, but here's a wonderful example of my eldest son's Virgo moon in the first house, opposite Saturn. Uh, and there are some aspects around his chart that can corroborate the things that I'm saying and highlight things that I'm saying. But a Virgo moon, what does a Virgo moon want to do? Virgo moon wants to do a good job. A Virgo moon wants to make things just a little better. A Virgo moon feels good with a completed project. A Virgo moon feels good having solved a problem. And a Virgo moon feels really good being helpful. Shadows of a Virgo moon could be anything ranging from shame and guilt from not being, quote, good enough in the eyes of the world to one seeing everything wrong with the world, as opposed to seeing how to make things a little better. So my eldest son was never actually tested for learning disabilities, but he had a hard time in school uh, learning the basics of reading and writing and math. But man, was this dude just so incredibly gifted at fixing things. So by the time he got to his sophomore year in high school, he came up to me, he said, "Dad, I just can't do this. I just I just can't do it." Now, since 7th grade, he had been working at the local bike shop. 7th grade, "Dad, I really," and he had been involved in uh, bicycle maintenance in the backyard since day one. But Dad, I really want to go work with uh, Pete was his name at Blue Dog in Viroqua, Wisconsin. "Dad, I really want to go work with Pete, but I'm only in 7th grade. What do I do?" And I said, "Elijah, you stand there and you ask him if you can take out the garbage, and you watch what he does. You see which tool he pulls off the rack to fix that spoke." Virgo moon. So he did it, starting in 7th grade. By the time he got to his sophomore year in high school, again, "Dad, I can't do this." I said, "Well, what do you want to do?" "I want to be a bicycle mechanic." So I said, "Well, um, I don't know that that's necessarily something you're going to be learning in high school." He's like, "Dad, I want to quit high school." Middle of his sophomore year. Now, common sense, conventional common sense says you don't let your kid drop out of high school. Conventional common sense says you don't let your kid drop out of high school his sophomore year. But since I was aware of his astrology and I knew that he is here to learn, third house sun, and perhaps even one day teach, third house sun, as a first house Virgo moon, that he had to make very self empowered choices, moon in the first house. So I said, okay, but here's the deal. If you drop out of high school, then you are going to put all of your learning, all of your energy, all of your focus into becoming the best damn bicycle mechanic on the planet. And he did. Now, my 24-year-old son has been the manager of, uh, of bicycle shops and is a whitewater raft guide and started working for a trail building company, and as well as um, being a general helper for the company slash resort that offers the whitewater raft guiding. Dude has more money than I do. Dude is exponentially happier at 24 years old than I ever was. Because, knowing his astrology, I knew that, and knowing who he was and watching him, develop over years, I knew that he wasn't going to just quit high school and go sit around and hang out with his friends drinking a six pack every night. So he started working at the bike shop, again, was elevated to manager, got his bicycle mechanics certification, and again, is now quite successful. So successful that both the resort that he works for and the trail building company that he works for have promoted him, elevated him. They both want him to take over their businesses eventually because he did what he needed to do. He knew himself and he was not going to quit. And so when we as parents can understand those first principles that we talked about, that our children's karma is their karma and not ours, we can encourage them based on knowing what they need. My son's Virgo moon in the first house. He needed to make self empowered choices, first house, where he could make himself better and better and better, Virgo moon, and to be of service to other people. A fix it guy, a guide, a helper, a professional trail builder. And again, he's incredibly successful now. So, my daughter, Pisces moon, third house. Understanding that the those with anyone who has any strong Pisces placements or Neptune placements are not necessarily of conventional reality. We get to make certain concessions for that. So, my daughter, what did she get for her birthday every year? She got art supplies. What did she want? Art supplies. What else did she want? More art supplies. So, knowing that she needed her space to dream, I was not going to do anything in terms of encouraging, quote, work the way I did with my elder son, because Pisces moon, she didn't need to work. She needed to dream. She needed to have the space to dream. And so the conversations, third house, that we would have, the conversations were all about deeper, higher, spiritual, or compassionate, or uh, sensitive, healing, understanding for the universe kind of conversations. Not necessarily, this is how you are to succeed in the world. This is the way you should do it. This is, if you go from A to B, you'll inevitably get to C, because we all know that Pisces can very easily jump from A to J, because all those other letters is kind of insignificant. So allowing her the space to dream, allowing her the space to imagine, and communicating with her on that sensitive level, again, I believe has encouraged and helped her and held the space for her to now be, again, incredibly successful. First, incredibly successful as a nanny, as a babysitter and nanny, from which she has made plenty of money. So telling her to go out and get a job, telling her to engage in the world, telling her to be sure to know the square root of the hypotenuse of pi or whatever, it just had no bearing on her existence. So to try to do that, to try to force something on that, just completely not recommended. My youngest son, Scorpio moon, fourth house, an Aquarian with a Scorpio moon, fourth house, from day one. If dude needed to rage, I had to not take it personally. I had to understand that a Scorpio moon is going to feel, a fourth house Scorpio moon is going to feel incredibly intensely, not always knowing why, but to allow a healthy space for the intense expression of that emotional energy. Very, very, very important. So much so that we have had intelligent, psychologically rich conversations since he was old enough to speak. And while he may grow up to be a professional potter, or he might join his brother in whitewater raft guiding, regardless, he and this is Papa's gentle nudging in a direction. He is a brilliant astrologer. 18 years old. He's amazing because he had a need, moon, to go really deep, really deeply, Scorpio. into the psychological workings and mythos of the human heart. Fourth house. So to acknowledge and hold the space for the benefits of the moon sign and house, and to do what we can as parents to not trigger the shadow aspects of those, we can raise very healthy children. Now, going back to some of those first rules, we're going to wound our children. Did I ever yell at my daughter? Yeah, I did. Is that the worst thing you could do for a Pisces moon in the third house? Yeah, it is. And so, oh, geez, I lost my temper with my daughter. Oh, I knew that it was a process of rebuilding trust in that sensitive, sensitive, compassionate, even psychic way. I knew that that was the way to help rebuild trust. My Virgo moon sun, if I ever told him, no, you're doing that wrong. Oh, no, you got to, immediately he would go into a guilt and shame response. So invariably we wound our children a little bit, and oh, geez, no, he's got a Virgo moon. Come on, you can't tell him he's wrong or bad. You have to show him, how best to do it right, not how you're doing it wrong. Okay, so no, I claim responsibility. I talk with them. I'm clear. And eventually, we heal that. My Scorpio moon, fourth house sun. We will get into it. We will Scorpio, 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 and sometimes if we are aware of the Scorpio archetype, we understand that sometimes we have to go through hell in order to get to that healing part. So I was going to engage my daughter differently than I engaged my youngest son, engaged my younger son a little more intensely, and he appreciates it. He appreciates the honesty. He appreciates the intensity and kind of relishes it, actually. So when we know our children's sun and our children's moon, we can go on to the next, third most important aspect, their ascendant. Their ascendant is where we step back and allow them to be exactly who they are, with as little influence as possible. My eldest son, Virgo rising. Dude, if you know you are on the path of self-perfection and I see you moving in that direction, you go, man, you go. Because when we think about the ascendant, Jody Forrest describes the ascendant as not only the mask that we wear, that we hear so often, it's the costume, it's the clothing that we wear, it's the vehicle that we are driving through this life, and it is the terrain that vehicle drives on. So my eldest with his Virgo rising, knowing that that's his automobile, and that those are his choices to align with Virgo in the most healthy, beneficial way, so incredibly important. My daughter, Sagittarius rising, she is on her own unique adventure in this life, living many different lives, learning how to be happy and joyous and expansive no matter what. And hopefully to align with the archetypes more of wise philosopher than a foolhardy partier. So that when the quote foolhardy partier aspect would show up, I could say something like, "Hey, are you on the right street? Are you driving down the right road, or did you take a little turn off there somewhere? Because this is where that road can lead, but this is where that other road can lead." "Oh, yes," she says. "Yes, I am the wise philosopher. Yes, I am the motivating, enthusiastic, uh, inspirational individual. Yeah, and that goes with my Cancer Mercury in the seventh house. Wow, I could be a wise inspiration for other people in a healing method, healing mode. Wow, integration as a compassionate, heartfelt Pisces moon. Wow." So to encourage them to drive on the best possible roads for their sign. My youngest, Leo rising. That's what Leo needs every single time. So, dude, go down those roads where you can shine. And also know that it's not about the applause as much as it is how well you feel about your performance. So, to encourage always one to have the best possible, him to have the best possible radiant, happy expression, as opposed to always seeking the applause, means for a happier life. And so, growing up, he was the local soccer star from, I guess, as soon as he could walk. He was beating out kids 2, 5, and 7 years older than he was. And I always had to remind him that it's about how well he feels in shining and radiating and giving a good performance, more so than it was about getting energy from other people. And knowing that he is an Aquarius with a Scorpio moon accentuates some of that. So the primal triad, knowing that your children's sun, moon, and ascendant, the house placements of their sun and moon, is my recommendation for all you really need to know in raising healthy children at the beginning. Now, when they start having relational challenges, yes, we can look to their Venus. My youngest son has a Venus in Capricorn. So having a moon in Scorpio in the fourth house gives him an incredible psychological depth. That incredible psychological depth must be met with other people on the field of maturity. Venus and Capricorn. If he hangs out with kids who are immature, who just want to go be hoodlums or whatever, he's not going to have any tolerance for that. And so we can look to his Venus in Capricorn as to when he comes up to me and says, "Dad, nobody my age understands me. They're all a bunch of little kids. I can't have any conversations with these immature little whatevers." Well, sweetheart, you have a Venus in Capricorn, etc., 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 etc. So as our children hit their teen years, then it's important to start bringing in all of the other observations we have of their chart. Case in point, understanding the Saturn cycle, the cycle of identity. Saturn makes us stronger by giving us limitations. Saturn, as we're growing up, is the gift to see reality clearly and to respond to it effectively. So understanding our children's Saturn natally is very important once they turn 7 with their first quarter Saturn square, and definitely when they turn 14 with their Saturn opposition. Knowing our children's Saturn placement and Saturn cycles helps us to keep their feet on the ground, helps to keep them real, and helps to keep them focused on their growth. Under no circumstances do we want to show up as a negatively limiting force in their life. Case in point, Eli, my oldest, was just finishing up his Saturn opposition. Dad, I want to drop out of school, be a bike mechanic. No, you've got a Virgo moon. You should be this, and you have to go to this, and you should get your degree and get your other degree and get your other degree, and then you get your other degree, and then you teach people how to get their degrees. That's what you should do. No. Understanding the Saturn cycle and the needs inherent in that, well, gee whiz, Saturn was conjoined his moon at the Saturn opposition. So at this time, he felt a need to mature in a particular direction based on his own self-empowered choice. And so, as an astrologer, knowing that particular cycle, it was much easier for me to say, okay, dude, I've got to trust that you can take care of yourself and that you know what you're doing. And like I said, he's quite successful. So understanding our children's Saturn cycles are very, very important. Where can you stand up and be strong? That's healthy Saturn. In this case, Saturn was on his moon. He needed to stand up, be strong, and follow his heart. And I, as astrologer, stepped back, took an omniscient look at that, and said, okay, dude, go for it. Now, there are many other cycles to be aware of. At 12 years old, we have our Jupiter return. At 14, 15, we have the Uranian sextile, indicating a push for individuality. Taking into account these outer planetary transits, by the time they get into their teen years, very, very, very important. And so during these teen years, we all have increased self-awareness, and we start to ask the whys and the wherefores of our existence. And it was at that time I started looking at the Pluto placements of my children. It was at that time I started looking at their nodal story. And it's at that time where you can start to be like, oh my God, are they going to be okay? But of course, they're going to be. because if we have done a good job raising our children 0 to 14 with encouraging the most healthy expression of the sun, moon, and ascendant, then invariably those Pluto wounds or that moon Saturn opposition or whatever aspects they have in their chart that might give us a pause, they are inevitably more well equipped to deal with it because they have been allowed to be exactly who they are and who they need to be and who they need to be in order to become who they need to be. That that the intense stuff was more tolerable, more engageable on a conscious level than had they not been. So I have pages and pages more notes here, but I also do want to, looking at the limited amount of minutes left, I would like to open this up to any questions that y'all may have. Anyone?
Ryan, I just
Don't
wanted
be shy.
Ryan, yes, it's Linda. I just wanted to thank you for your advice. Very wise. I did the same with my daughter. I did not speak astrology to her at all, but just recently, she's 36 now, she sent me an email, "Hey mum, what's happening in the stars?" You know, like her life was in chaos. So it was a pleasure to help her there, and I will only just answer her questions rather than, force anything upon her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So wise, because it's so easy to see that, oh my gosh, Pluto is coming to conjoin the moon of my child. Oh, I know that could mean these certain things. Oh, or even worse, the solar arc moon of my child is going to conjoin their Pluto. Oh my God, that's going to mean something. I know it means something. And then we project our fear onto them, and it's like adding too much salt to a soup.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So we can take a few more questions. Or comments. Yeah.
Ryan, I loved what you were talking about, and I was going to ask, I don't have children, but what you were saying resonated with me quite a bit. So can we use this what you're saying to parent ourselves, parent our own child?
Brilliant. Yes. In fact, yes. In fact, I would hope that we would, very much so. Moreover, part 2 to this talk is that I have many tens, 20, 30, 40 charts of children that I have done for parents. Parents have contacted me on many occasions. Can you do the chart of my child? And invariably, how I just spoke is how I would speak to them, to the parents wanting a chart for their child. Same kind of advice, same kind of encouragement, and same emphasis on the primal triad. If I'm doing a reading for a child, a newborn, for parents, which I've done on many occasions, the last thing I'm going to want to do is say, and this is how your kid is messed up, and this is their horrible past life karma where they were knifed in the back and they have to work. No, 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 God, no, 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 no. To inject any sort of fear into the reading of a child's chart is completely ill-advised. Now, showing the potential shadows is a whole lot different. We can always word it differently, like, oh, your child has a Virgo moon, always encourage their happiness by, by encouraging them to encourage themselves to always do a good job. And please don't ever tell them they are bad, wrong, or not good enough. I'd say stuff like that. But to do a karmic reading of a child to the parents, pointing out their past life story as being abandoned by their parents in a past life, that would not necessarily be a wise thing to do. But yes, Wanda, going back to your question, yeah, this is how we can look at ourselves astrologically too. If I am a Sagittarian, how do I encourage those best aspects of myself and also be incredibly honest and aware of my shadow aspects? Yeah.
Okay, do we have any final questions or comments? Okay, well, Ryan, that brings us to the end of your meeting. Thank you so much. It was just amazing. Would you all please thank Ryan Evans?
Thank you, Ryan, as always.
Oh,
Thank
you're
you.
welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks everybody. Glad you're all here.
Awesome.